Welcome to the Infinite Wealth Podcast. I'm Cameron Christensen, along with our co-host Anthony Faso. We just finished up our interview with Ken Gronbeck, world-renowned demographer. Anthony, what was something that you learned today?
I learned a few things on here. One was what a demographer is, okay? And I would tell you, to be honest, when we booked him, I wasn't sure what I was going to learn, but we learned a lot. It was very interesting. And some of the takeaways like that I think our listeners and myself can use with our investing is he had a lot of openings about real estate and kind of where the housing market is going to be. And it actually got me more excited about the housing market. Like, we're going to need more homes.
A lot more.
That I thought was very, very interesting. And also, he was propping up the millennials.
Yeah.
Right? How many times have we hear these terrible things about the millennials? But, what he talked about is, what? The older generation is always putting down the younger generation.
Yeah, they're never as good as other guys. Yeah,
it's never as good. But, and you know what? So we do work with a lot of millennials. And, I spoke with a 22-year-old a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, man, if you're 22, right? So to me, it was the millennials are going to be our future, and these guys do have a lot to offer. So I learned a lot. What were some of the things that you learned, Cam?
I was introduced to Ken years ago, right? I think we saw him at the same conference, but man, I kind of listened to his message then, and I was very interested in it, and I've kind of followed him since then. I'm a big fan. I got all of his books. They're all signed. That's why Anthony's laughing. But what I loved is his career started in advertising, and as the millennials, these generations kind of move through kind of the economy, they can either prop up, right, or they can completely turn down certain spheres of the economy. And so I love that kind of takeaway and some of the things that he was doing. If you just look at the sheer size of the Gen Y and the millennials that's coming, it is mind-blowing. Baby boomers have always talked about being a very large generation. There's 80 million of them. If you look at Gen X, which we're a part of, there's 68 million. But Gen Y, which is just now kind of leaving mom and dad's basement and entering the workforce, there's 100 million of them. And so I love the way that Ken is able to kind of look at the size of these generations and predict with a very high degree of accuracy of how they're going to affect certain segments of the market: real estate, advertising, manufacturing, how Social Security is going to be impacted, and taxes. And so those are the things that we're going to be talking about today. In the show notes afterwards, we'll certainly add a link to Ken's website so that you guys can follow him and connect with him and continue to get this information from him. Yep. Brief introduction on Ken. Ken's president of KGC Direct, and he's also author of several books, two of them being Upside, Profiting from the Profound Demographic Shifts Ahead, which was released in 2017. The information in that is absolutely applicable today because demographics don't change. So even though it's a few years old, I would absolutely recommend that you guys read it. And he's also got the best-selling book that's out there, The Age Curve, How to Profit from the Coming Demographic Storm. And he's got a blend of marketing savvy and common sense demography. And if you guys want to keep up to date with some of the generational impacts on supply and demand, make sure you follow Ken.
You know what? One thing I also learned on here is how much of a man crush you had on Ken.
It's pretty big.
And I say that because I got a call from Becky, and she's like, who's this Ken guy? And she asked if he had some sort of affiliation with Paul Mitchell. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. And she goes, I go, why would you say that? He goes, I've never seen Cameron so excited about a guest. And I go, oh, that's because Ken was the screenwriter of Don't Mess with the Zohan.
Oh, jeez.
But I'm like, no, but again, I will say kudos to you, Cameron. I wasn't sure how this episode was going to go and how the value is going to be to the listeners, but there's a lot of value here, and you can take this data and put it into place to help you grow your wealth and passive income.
Awesome.
Enjoy the episode.
Take care. Yeah, we are excited to have you on today. At least I'm very excited. Anthony is as well. I was just giving him a hard time. But Ken, we're happy to have you here. If you could start us off, and I know you're a demographer, and there are not very many demographers across the country. How does one even kind of get started in that field?
I think it's a personal interest. In fact, if you want to freak out, all you have to do is go to Google and put in Ken, my first name, and demographer, and I come up wall to wall because I'm the only one. I'm the only Ken. I mean, what you have to have is we were in marketing. My wife and I we had a marketing agency in Connecticut, and we had American Honda motorcycle as a client, and we had about 140 dealers that we represented. And one year, they just all of a sudden there was no traffic in the stores. American Honda motorcycles and we had run millions of dollars worth of advertising, and so we had our heads on the block with American Honda. They wanted to know what the heck was going on. But Kawasaki, Suzuki, and Yamaha all had the same problem. This is 1986. You guys probably weren't alive yet. So
it kind of was.
Yeah.
But
I was running around.
Anyway, so between 1986 and 1992, business for the Japanese brands of motorcycles fell 80%. All the dealers closed. All is closed. Unless you were selling cars or outboards or lawnmowers, you were out of business. And we couldn't figure out why. I mean, it was just a mystery to us. We had been in the business for a very long time. American Honda paid us by return mail. It was a fantastic relationship. We sold thousands and thousands of bikes. So we shook hands with American Honda. All the dealers closed, and that was that. We moved on to something else. By 1996, it was Clinton versus Dole, October of the year. And there was a full-page editorial in the newspaper where we were in Connecticut, the Hartford Courant, which is like the state newspaper. That was an indictment, I believe, of you guys. It was saying that Generation X, born 1965 to 1984, were a bunch of lazy, slacker couch potatoes who were not involving themselves in the political process. They were not running for office. They were not voting. They were not giving money. And what was the United States going to come to if you guys were our future? And I didn't believe it. I had 40 people working for me, and 20 of them were Gen Xers, which is if you're born between 65 and 84, that's what you are.
Yeah.
And so I called in our research department and I said, this doesn't make sense to me. Find out everything you can about Generation X. Why are they not performing at the level of the baby boomers born 45 to 64? And he came back and he said 3 days later and said, I discovered why. And I said, why? And he said, there's fewer of them. And that didn't go in. And was like, what? Yes. He said, yeah, they weren't born. He said, there are 69 million Generation Xers and there are 80 million boomers. He said, do the math. He said, when you have a dip in your population like that, everything falls off. And I said, really? I said, I think we just made a discovery of why we lost American Honda, because we sold motorcycles to men 16 to 24. That was it. 25, they sold that death wish, got a ring, got married. Yeah, true. So what happened was the baby boomers just exited the demo. And the Generation X came along, and it's a hole in the population. And when you have a market economy, you can't have a shrinking market. It screws you up totally. So that's what happened. And I said, this can't be the only thing that this generation has done. So we went back and looked at what Generation X did to maternity wards. Well, they shut them down. They shut down public schools. They shut down the toy industry. They shut down bicycles. They shut down motorcycles. They shut down Detroit when it was their turn to buy cars. And they shut down housing in 2008. So it is a hole in our population that is currently 37 to 56 years old. And it is a serious issue. No one understands it. No one understands critical mass of population. No one understands birth. No one understands aging. No one understands immigration. Once you have all those things, you can make forecasts and be dead on, just dead on. But it's a science. You wonder why there aren't many of us. I don't know. Maybe it's because people hate math. I don't know. I really don't. But I deal with people all the time that will compare two populations, and they'll say this population is 2000 and this population is 2000. Why aren't they the same? I said, well, how old are they? Oh, that makes a difference? Yes, it makes a difference. So that's and what happened was the science of demography kind of overwhelmed me. So I put marketing behind me and started writing books and speaking about demography, and I've been doing that for 20 years. So
very cool, right?
Yeah.
I didn't mean to leave.
Yeah, no, I right as I was thinking about kind of our path, right? As Anthony and I look at kind of where we were going, and he was an accountant. He's recovering now, but I had a small business, and we came across a few strategies, and you're like, man, this is amazing, right? And so you get this passion that kind of goes with it. So once you came across demographic, well, real quickly, what is the difference between maybe demographics and economics?
Demographics precipitates economics. Demographics is people. If you're honest, you'd have to say that probably 95% of business decisions are based on money, on numbers. They should be based on people who generate the money, because if you don't understand that, you're cooked. Another example would be Harley Davidson. Harley Davidson, just as the boomers stopped riding Japanese bikes, they started riding Harley Davidsons, and then Harley Davidson's business spiked up until about 2005. Between 2005, 2006, 2008, they built these enormous dealerships, and they just thought they were going to sell these big lunking things forever. And then the boomers aged out of Harley Davidson, and it was over. And now it's over there. And you can go through products. Levi Strauss. Yeah. Levi Strauss called me up. Chief marketing officer from San Francisco calls me, a little podunk advertising agency in Connecticut, in 1998. And he said, Ken, I know you understand the jean business, because we're very familiar with the clothing business. We had grown a small jean business from $10 million to $400 million. And one of our clients. So he said, I know you understand the business. He says, we can't make our product fast enough, but we're noticing that in some of our markets, it's dipping. Do we have a demographic issue? And I said, who's your client? Tell me exactly who your client is. And he said, an 18 to 34-year-old man or woman. I said, why do you cut it off at 34? He says, because basically they can't fit in the product anymore. True. You just age out of wearing that product's too tight.
Anthony's wearing joggers right now.
So I said, okay, this is, you realize you're a boomer business. I mean, this is a chief marketing officer, probably makes $1 million a year. He said, I said, you realize you're a boomer business? And he said, yeah, I know that. And I said, the last baby boomer was born 1964. Yeah. I said, add 34 years, your cutoff, to 64. What do you come up with? And it was a pause. And he said, 1998. And I said, what year is it? And he said, 1998. And he said, do we have a problem? And I said, you'll see. Well, they went from like $8 billion to $3 billion in 3 years. Why? Because people they just don't get it. They don't understand that this is, people are the issue, not money, not finances, not anything. You talked about people buying real estate. You want to know about real estate?
Yeah.
Real estate. Yeah. Here's an obvious one for you. Between 1985 and 2004, there were 88 million people born in the United States. And for the most part, they stretched adolescence to 30. They really did. And they're called Gen Y. They're called millennials. Now they're moving out of their parents' basements. They're throwing away all those trophies they didn't deserve. Right? Aren't they? And they're starting households. There's only one problem. There's no place for them to live. You know how many housing units we're short right now? About 25 million. 25 million. I mean,
wow.
that's over the course of the next 10 plus years.
So sorry, Ken, I want to jump in. So 25 million, how do you come up with the number of 25 million that we're short?
88 million people that live with their parents under one roof. There's 155 million structures in the United States. 1/2 of our population lives under one roof, and 25% of our population is moving out and they're not going to live in their cars.
Okay. So if I'm understanding you correct, we've got kind of the baby boomers, right? That's the parents.
Yeah.
Right. The older generation. We've got kind of us, and then we've got kind of these younger, late teens, early 20s ish that are kind of looking at moving out. Or 30s ish. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, they're actually 17 to 36.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and that's so they stretched adolescence, and a lot of them didn't leave home until like they were 30s. They're starting households late. They're marrying late. They're buying houses late. They're having kids late. They just are. That's who they are. I don't get into the psychographics of it. I only know that that's the evidence, and that's where the data is. So they have to live somewhere. So we just completed a huge project, say just maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, for Bain Capital Real Estate, and they wanted to know where people were going to live, and so.
What's the answer, Ken?
Well, I can't go into the actual details because that's proprietary, but it's multifamily housing because we have student loan debt, and these kids were not welcomed into the labor force because their parents didn't leave it, but they're leaving it now like lemmings because of COVID. That's why we have a labor shortage. We have a labor shortage because the lion's share of our labor was baby boomers, and the baby boomers have aged out. You guys, you Gen Xers, don't have the critical mass to fill the footprint. And Generation Y is not ready to move in yet. But when they do, we're going to have all the labor we ever needed. But they're going to need a place to live, which is why multifamily housing is going to be a very big deal going for the next 10 years.
You just referenced 3 different generations, baby boom, Gen X, and Gen Y. Can we put some numbers along with those? I think you referenced 2 of them maybe already. Are there the population size?
1945 to 1964 baby boomers, roughly 80 million.
Okay.
1965 to 1984, Generation X, 68, 69 million. 1985 to 2004, Generation Y, millennials, 88 million. Census data. I don't make it up. Census data. This is just the one of the things that the Gen X did do was because they couldn't supply the labor necessary for the aging baby boomers, that aged into their wealth years, was provide them with enough labor, and that's what sucked in literally, I would say close to 20 million Latinos from Mexico. It just and God bless the Latinos. Without them, we're cooked because we don't have enough people to pay taxes.
That's right. I was gonna bring that up at some point. I'm glad you alluded to it. Right. So I heard 80 million in one generation, 70 in the next, and then 100 following that. How does that affect kind of the taxes? How does the baby boomer generation of 80 million, or how does a Gen X generation of 70 million support a previous generation of 80 million, right? There's going to be a pretty large tax base that's missing there.
Yeah. And it is, and we're seeing that now. But the consolation is, one, the deficit of Generation X, and they're currently 37 to 56 years old, was filled in with Latinos. And the Latinos, of course, blessed us with children that are part of the millennials. So we're fine. We're going to have, we're the only, the United States is the only world power, the only industrialized nation that has Generation Y millennials. You don't find them in Europe. You don't find them in Eastern Europe. You don't find them in Russia. You don't find them anywhere in Asia. They're all cooked. They're not going to go away, but they're not going to be what they are now. The United States has an incredible future because of Generation Y millennials, because of the size of them. One of the things that they're about to do, what drives consumption? What drives the economy is consumption. You buy stuff.
Yeah.
But I have 2 daughters. One's 26 and one's 29. When they moved out of our house, they didn't take the vacuum cleaner. They didn't take the dish soap. They bought their own stuff. And then once they got married, they bought more stuff and more stuff and more stuff and bought cars, and off we go. That's what's going to happen. See, the baby boomers drove the economy through their formative years. What's going to happen is Generation Y is going to do exactly the same thing. We just don't like them.
Ken, I got 2 questions there. And I think you may have answered it, but how did we go? I can see the next generation being less, but how did the Generation X produce so many babies, so the Generation Y was so much larger? Was that because of the Latinos?
No. What happened was, who produced who? Boomers produced Generation Y millennials. Generation X is going to produce Generation Z, not fully born yet.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and then why was Generation X so small? Well, Generation X didn't have many parents.
Silent generation, right?
That's exactly correct. The silent generation born 1925 to 1944 was only a little over 50 million people. There was no immigration during that period because nobody came here during the Depression because it was just as easy to starve wherever they were. And there was no immigration during the war because it was illegal. So that was a tiny generation. The generation prior to that, the GI generation, was 70 million, but it was a ton of immigrants. They were born 1905 to 1924.
Now, can you mention that with the millennial? Now, is there a difference between millennials and Generation Y?
No.
Okay. All right. Now, you made a comment that we don't like them. But you also made a comment when they were analyzing Generation Xers that they were lazy and don't want to work. And then that's kind of similar what we hear about Generation Y. Is there any truth to that? Or is it part of, we always think we work harder than our kids do?
It's a bunch of crap. It's just, we make it up. And you want to know the proof of that? Okay. I grew up in the 60s and 70s. I was never a hippie because I had a nice sports car and I had a good job and I had a nice apartment. But I grew up with hippies, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I remember my stepfather saying to me, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That's how you're going to run the country? And I said, well, it sounded good at the time. It really did. You know, it kind of made sense, but it didn't. What happened to the hippies? I mean, I go looking for hippies, you know, like my spare time. Let's go find some hippies. They're gone. Where'd they go? Well, they grew up, got jobs, amassed wealth, and became Republicans. So, so don't worry about it. Don't worry about Generation X. Don't worry about millennials. But you know, I've got a brother that calls them snowflakes, and he says, you know, they don't show up for work. They don't do this. They don't. Well, listen, same thing with your generation when you were young. You were just like that. Now remember, okay, just so you know, guys, and I'm going to give you a better understanding here. Everything in demography is 30,000 feet, big picture, macro, long term. Okay, we make generalizations. You have to. Yeah. You have to make generalizations, and you have to look at things from a large scale, or it doesn't work. Once you get tiny, once you get into the minutia, and especially if you get into psychographics, how do these people think? You get lost.
Okay. So 30,000 foot level right now where we're at is right. What I'm seeing is we got the baby boomers. In my opinion, I feel like a lot of the baby boomers feel like they're behind in regards to retirement. And so they're still working, right? Gen X, right, is still in there being productive and are accumulating years. And now we've got Gen Y that's kind of entering this workforce or the labor force.
Yep.
How do these three generations kind of mingle or coexist here?
They don't. No, and I'll tell you because I've written articles on this about the importance of HR. I'm a demographer. I believe that people precipitated money. Money did not precipitate people. It doesn't work that way. People were here first. Right now and going forward, HR is going to be important because there's no way these three generations are going to get along because they are from different planets. The baby boomers are already proving that. And you're seeing that in this huge fight that we have between conservatives and liberals, even though the conservatives are going to be history because they're dying at the rate of 1 every 16 seconds. And the millennials are coming of age to vote 1 every 8 seconds. So the differential in the voting public is going to, so we will have a liberal administration for at least the next 11 years. There's no way around it. We just keep on adding liberals. What I suggest people do in terms of the workplace is you hire a chief human resource officer, and then don't try to hire millennials. Hire a type A class millennial and have that person hire your millennials. Millennials need to hire millennials. You'll never understand them. They'll never get past you. You can't do that. And what will happen, and it's going to be fun to watch, is millennials will find their way into management positions, and they'll be managing boomers and Xers. You want to see some fireworks?
I'm trying to think of it, imagining that.
Yeah, sounds like
Oh, yeah.
entertainment.
Well, we have the caliber of Generation Y millennials is very high, very educated. Can I tell you a story?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. My daughter is drop dead gorgeous, and she's a very pretty girl, and she was like 26, 27, and she started thinking about maybe it's time to get married. And I said, well, I want you to marry Tim Tebow. I mean, I like him.
No, yeah, solid guy.
Yeah, solid guy. So I said, and so she brings home this geek. I mean, and and I said, well, what's this? And she said, well, Kyle asked me to marry him, and I said yes. Okay.
Oh boy.
He didn't ask you, Ken?
No. Hang on. So Kyle came and asked me, and I love him, and I said yes immediately because a lot of this is hyperbole. Okay. But I said yes. And I said, Kyle, I mean, I'm a hot rodder. I have guns. I like outdoors. I mean, and I said, Kyle, what's your hobby? And he said, I'm a gamer. And I said, what's that? He said, well, I play video games on TV. I mean, and I said, well, my life is over. I mean, I can't believe this. So they get married. Kyle gets a job with Travelers Insurance in Hartford. He goes, and I notice he doesn't go to work all the time. And I'm getting a little nervous because he goes to work in shorts. He has T-shirts with sayings on them like yours. And I'm thinking,
Ken, I have a daughter who's 22. And honestly, you're scaring me right now. I'm in tune. Like,
no, stay in tune. So I said, Kyle, how's work going? And he said, great. And I said, what are you doing? He said, well, they gave me this task. I said, what is it? And he said, you know, all of the billions of dollars that Travelers lost in the fires in California? And I said, yeah. I said, they don't want that to happen again. So they gave me all the data and said, make sure it doesn't happen again. And I'm thinking, he's 28 or 29, however old. And I said, so what did you do? And he said, well, I put an app on the phone. And what you do, he said, they gave me all the data. So now with the app on the phone, what you do is you if you have a house that they want to insure, you take a picture of it, you enter some information, and it will tell you what to charge them or whether you should insure it or not insure it. And I said, did they embrace it? And they said, yeah, they patented it, and my name's on the patent. And I'm thinking to myself, what do you think that's worth? And he said, well, it's probably worth billions. No, he didn't get the money. But what's my point? No, what's my point? My point is, these kids can quadruple task. I can't double task. They are so in tune with what, I mean, I can't shut the light off on my phone. I mean, the light comes on, I'm embarrassed. I try to hide it.
Sounds like my wife.
Yeah. So these kids are going to turn us on our ears, but just remember, they're not going to work for mean people. They're going to be a kinder, gentler. Black Lives Matter is going to be very, very important to them. Our culture is going to change, and it's going to change radically. And all of us, I'm a Republican, conservative. We're going to have to swallow and say, okay, our culture is changing, but it's not that bad. It really isn't. No.
Ken, well, I don't know, this might be a little bit off topic, but somebody, I think this was a quote, somebody, I want to say Winston Churchill, but I don't know, but that said, if you're 20 and you're not a liberal, you don't have a heart.
Right.
And if you're 40 and you're not conservative, you don't have a brain.
Correct.
So that's what I'm hoping is going to happen. These guys are going to grow a brain, but where are we off on that? Or where's Winston off on that?
He's not. And that's correct. In fact, and that's going to be in my new book. That very quote.
Oh, okay.
Nice. When's this scheduled to come out?
It's not. I've been pitching at Harper College. Now Harper College is my publisher. And for some reason, my last book came out in 2017. It's still very germane, and because things don't change in demography. Mm-hmm. It's called Upside. And so I keep on sending them my proposals, and they say, this is just like your old stuff. Come up with something new. So I've come up with something new. So I'm waiting now for their decision as to whether I can publish this or not.
Well, when you do, let's have you back on the show and we can kind of talk about some of the new stuff and these kids growing brains.
So my son's 11 and right. I don't think he falls in Y, but I think he's in Z or whatever it is. Yeah. But I look at him and the kid's doing 14 different things, really like 4, right? When he's sitting there, he's playing a video game. He's talking to his buddies. He's listening to music, right? Mom and dad are trying to tell him to do something, dude. And I can't do more than one thing at a time. And so I think that's kind of what you're referring to.
Well, and they're also managing their phone and like all of that. You're right. They can manage more at a time.
So from maybe a entrepreneur's perspective, how does somebody market to kind of that generation right there? What I'm hearing is kind of they're going to be the saving grace to drive this economy moving forward, right? As a business owner, how do we target these guys?
Hire a millennial to do it. Don't try to do it yourself. You'll never speak their language. Okay. It's just like, why is chief human resource officer more important than a chief finance CFO? It's because that's going to be a serious issue. How do you market to them? How do you manage them? How do you figure them out? Is Amazon going to replace retail? All of that. Don't try to do it yourself. You're just going to get frustrated. What you need to do is you need to cultivate your own millennials within your sphere and have them handle it for you. That's the way it's got to be. Same thing with politics right now. It's the Republican Party needs to redefine themselves. They really do. And they need to redefine themselves in light of the new voters that are coming on the scene by the millions, because it's making all the difference in the world. Did that answer your question? You still look a little puzzled.
I think you did. I don't think we like the answer.
I want a different answer, Ken.
Okay, a different answer.
When I was going back to real estate, I was thinking, do you, in regards to real estate, multifamily, in your sphere of demographics, do you also look at like migration patterns? Yeah. I mean, do you? Okay. Because what I've seen is a lot of kind of a mass exodus from California moving to Texas, but I don't know if that's just generic or is it north and south, east, west? Can you share something with us there?
Housing. If you, two things happen when young people can't afford housing. They don't have kids or they don't stay. And so what you have is a bailing out of the Northeast and some of the Midwest states the same way. You literally have states where California lost a House seat. Texas picked up 2, right? Florida picked up 1. You can buy a 2,000 square foot house in Texas for a couple $100,000. What the heck is that? You can't do that in California. Mm-mm. And so it's driving out all of their Gen Y millennials and younger people. Florida, same way. Florida, its population right now, and Florida is kind of an anomaly, but a very interesting thing that's happening, just to answer your question about migration. Who's going to Florida? Baby boomers are flocking to Florida. The population of Florida right now is around 24 million. It'll go to 35. It will be 35 in the next 10, 15 years. And there physically isn't enough of anything down here for the baby boomers. And how much money do the baby boomers have? Well, okay, there are some that are not prepared for retirement, but man, you can't tell down here. You really can't by the number of Maseratis and Corvettes that these old timers are driving and park at the supermarket. So I can't figure it out. But what will happen in Florida is boomers are coming down and Generation Y is coming down to serve them, because that's going to be the new labor pool. There's no other place we can get it. Tons and tons of the work are being done by Latinos and these new Gen Y that are coming in, and they have to have a place to live. So multifamily housing in Florida is exploding. And then everything else in Florida, all the real estate in Florida is exploding. And I live here full time now. And it's like, you can almost feel a vibration that with the price of housing going up and up and up. It's scary to think. I mean, things don't stay on the market very long, but here's what's going to happen to Florida. Baby boomers have roughly $100 trillion. I'm not kidding. Okay, they have $10 trillion in the bank, $20 trillion in the stock market, and real estate about 70. And that's just big picture. They're coming down here. They have money. Guess what they don't want to do? Die. When does the body break? The body breaks at 75. That's when things go really south. Baby boomers are currently 58 to 76. Guess what? They're just crossing over the threshold of the body breaking. They're going to throw money at healthcare like you cannot believe. Just give you an example. My wife and I go to church every Sunday. Okay. I'm not trying to make that the issue. We go to church every Sunday. It's a bit of a drive. And every time we go down the road, there's a new medical building. What is it? What is going to happen is the baby boomers are going to turn Florida into the healthcare capital of the world. And we are going to beat, finally, cancer, heart disease, and Alzheimer's. Why? Because we have critical mass and we have money, and we're going to throw it at it. And that is what's going to happen. So you want healthcare down here. You just cannot believe the specialties that are available to me when I go for things. I recently, I had a detached retina. Okay. I had spots in my eyes, the floater thing, and I went to a retina center. And the doc came in and put his scope on me and said, I said, the floaters are bothering me. He said, ignore them, they're nothing. He said, but you have a detached retina, you need surgery. And I went, laying on my stomach for 3 weeks and all that stuff. And he said, no, I'll do it right now. He went and got a laser. He went and got a laser, stuck it in my eye and went boom, 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 boom. And he said, you're done. And it's still fixed. So, we're talking healthcare down here at levels we don't understand. And healthcare, boomers are going to drive healthcare around the nation. I don't know about California. California, I don't know. I really don't. I just gave away a house in Connecticut, and my brother has a much, much smaller house in California that's worth about $8 million. I don't get it.
No, I do. Well, interesting about that advanced healthcare. And I know if they start having a center about having your hair silky smooth, Cameron's moving down there to Florida. So, but fortunately with Zoom, we could still do the podcast. Sorry, Ken, not all my jokes are funny, but I enjoyed that one.
I'm being sympathetic here.
When the news came out that California lost a seat and, people were moving to Texas and Florida, kind of what I interpreted it was it was because of the political views that some people are, but you're telling me that it might be more about the almighty dollar than about somebody's feelings. Housing.
Yeah. I don't know. California has so many problems. I don't even want to go there, but it's sort of it's the most populous state in the United States. It's about 40 million, but you watch what happens to Texas. I think Texas might even go blue. So
Ken, you know what? You're giving me like a yo-yo, man. You're telling me these great things about healthcare, and then man, I don't know how to feel. I was feeling really good.
We can get you counseling if you want.
Yeah, he does need
it. Texas turns blue. I can't imagine.
I heard they got a lot of good counselors down in Florida. You should move. The thought that came to my mind was like around manufacturing. Right, as if the labor force in that Gen X was smaller. Is that one of the reasons that manufacturing went overseas?
Yes. And I'll tell you what's going to happen, because it's coming back. And it's coming back with a vengeance, manufacturing is. And it's coming back for a variety of reasons. But I shared that, what I really do for a living is I do keynotes in front of large audiences. I've got one. That's
where we saw you.
Yeah, well, I've got one this month for between 700 people are going to be there. And I love it. I really do. I love getting up in front of audiences. I shared the stage with somebody in real estate, and they can't keep industrial properties. Industrial properties come on the market and boom, they're gone. Why? Because everything's made in China. Why? Because China's labor is 25% of what the rest of the world is. Why? Well, they had a huge population, but they did this the dumbest demographic move in the history of the world, called the one child only policy. And for the last 40 years, they went from having their families having 6 kids down to 1. So now what they have is a huge vacuum under 40, huge vacuum. And it's distorted because there are many, many more men than there are women. In fact, there's probably 100 million men in Florida and in Texas. What am I doing here?
China, Ken. We're in China.
In China. 100 million men in China that have no prospect of marrying because there are no female counterparts. Just they don't exist.
100 million?
Yeah, that's the population of Mexico. Yeah, well, yeah, you do know what they did to girls and what they did to people that went and tried to have 2 babies. They did forced abortions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
they disappeared.
Yeah, well, what happens? I'm sitting in an airport in New Jersey, Newark Airport of all places. I'm sitting next to a woman. We're bored. I said, "So, what are you doing here?" And she said, "Well, I just got back from China." I said, "What were you doing there?" She said, "My husband works for IBM, and so he was working there, and I was with him." I said, "Oh," I said, "Well, what was that like? What did you do?" And she said, "I worked at an orphanage." And I said, "Wow, that's very noble of you. What was that like?" And she said, "Well, we get up in the morning and go check dumpsters for baby girls."
Oh shit.
Oh.
And that is what it is. You don't get 100 million more men 40 and under by not killing the girls because they come out 50-50. You know, I mean, it still works that way.
Yeah.
And it's a lot worse now. Now they've gone to what China does not have, and it started 3 years ago, is their labor pool. The critical mass of the people that could work is shrinking. So when that shrinks, they don't have cheap labor anymore. So, and what else do they use for labor? Well, they use slaves. China does slaves. China also does prisoners. In fact, why do the Hong Kong people not want to go to China to go to jail? Because when you go to jail in China, there's 2 things that happen to you. 1, you become labor, and 2, you get a physical, and you become an organ donor. And they do 100,000 organ transplants in China a year with no organ donor program. Where do you think they get the parts? And
Oh my goodness.
well, no, true. No, listen, guys, I can't go to China, and I've had people in front of Chinese contingents get up and walk out of my presentation. I don't care. I think the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, they're like Nazis. They're beyond Nazis. I don't know what the deal is with them. But one of the things that you're going to see, and this is going to be a serious factor because it's going to be a collision with our millennials, is China uses child labor, and they probably have 100 million people between 10 and 15 that they use for labor. So child labor is not going to fly because you cannot, people that are born babies, that you're not born 30 years old so you can work. It's going to be a very interesting process. But all of Southeast Asia is the same way. Not so much India, but Japan is, personally, Japan is finished. Japan will not be Japan in 2050 because they just simply won't have any taxpayers. They just only have old people. You can't screw around with demographics. You have to understand what's going on.
Now,
Good to know.
Ken, you had mentioned when you went off on China, you were talking about how that's going to affect manufacturing and industrial here. Could you maybe expand on that?
Yeah, well, what's going to happen is we're going to have a labor force that's going to be the best one we've ever had. It's the biggest one we've ever had. And that's Generation Y millennials, 88 million of them. Plus we have Latinos, and they're like workaholics. I don't understand them. They're just amazing. I thank them when I see them working. I just do. I'm grateful that they came here. I tell folks, go find a Latino, kiss them on the lips and thank them for coming. If you got a problem with Latinos, you're crazy. They're a wonderful generation. We will have labor. We will have technology. Are we going to have cheap labor? No. But China isn't either. In fact, China's not going to have labor because they screwed up so badly with the one child only policy. And it's kind of that sort of thing just spreads throughout Southeast Asia, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, all the same thing, just not having kids. Oh, you know what the worst one is? You know where there's the fewest kids, and it's not going to be a country in 2050, and that's South Korea. South Korea is like a model republic for the United States. It's something we're very proud of. No kids. They don't do kids. And you further freak you out. I'm going to take you into another dimension here. You just now relax, okay?
Yeah, buckling up, Ken. Let's go.
What is going on with reproduction? What's going on with fertility? You can ask Siri, what's the fertility of, and then she'll tell you. Well, the fertility of South Korea is 1. They're having 1 child per couple. Well, that means their population is going to half. Well, you can't do that in a market economy. That's called death. It doesn't work. And they're xenophobic, so they don't bring in immigrants. So what's going to happen? They're gone. And even if they took North Korea, which they're not going to, because North Korea is a very, very different situation. Japan is not only not having kids, Japan is not marrying. Japan, men and women, are not interested in each other. What do you think is like taking that desire? That's a pretty deep desire, don't you think? And you know what it is? They found a substitute, and it's 1/3 of the content of the internet, and it's getting more and more exotic. Yeah, the Internet of Things, it's getting more and more exotic. The only problem is it just doesn't. Computers don't produce babies, and if you don't produce babies, once the population of the world gets to a point where it's not increasing, it's 7.7 billion now. It could probably go to 12 billion, 12 billion by 2060, 2070. But when it starts to shrink, and when it starts to shrink here in the States, we're a market economy. You can't have a shrinking market. They don't work. You can't accommodate them. You can't adjust for them. We don't. It's a hairy thing that's going to go on. So I encourage people. I tell my kids, and I tell other people, I say, please have kids. Please have children. It's go forth and multiply, not subtract, not divide, and not even add. Okay, so now I left you silent. You're gonna edit that part.
No, not at all. I was thinking I did my job. I got 3 kids, Anthony.
Yeah. Well, see, now you're way above replacement level fertility. You're at 2. You're fine.
Yeah. Okay, we like 2.5 between the two.
Yeah, that's right. 2.2 is where you want to be.
Oh, perfect.
2.2. Okay, we're right there.
Yeah, awesome. Ken, you referenced a couple of your books, right? I think I've got Upside right here with me now, and then also Age Curve, your 2 books. Where can our listeners find these?
Well, you can get Upside on my site if you want a signed and scribed copy, or you can just go to Amazon. They're readily available. The Upside is selling very, very well, and I'll tell you what, just so you know too. Yes, it is a book about demographics that people say, even you mentioned the word, some people fall asleep. It's written to be read. It really is. It's written to be read, and it's written in a way just like I'm having this conversation.
What's the takeaway? What will they learn, benefit from reading Upside?
Well, they can learn what's going to happen in politics. They can learn what's going to happen in culture. They can learn what's going to happen in commerce. And I'm going to be conservative here, an 80% accuracy. I mean, do I screw up on some things? Sure. I mean, I called the election for Hillary. She won the popular vote, so I kind of take credit for that. But the Electoral College, she lost. I called this last election. I called easily, and you know what the difference is? In the difference between 2016 and 2020 was about 25 million more votes for the Liberals, physically existing, just more. They had it wasn't it. There's an ever increasing, and by 2024 it's going to be 50 million. So there's no way that under the current circumstances that the Republicans are going to pull this off. They can't. I tell people that, and they send hitmen after me.
Well, I'm glad they haven't been successful.
Yeah,
absolutely. Ken, hey, thanks for joining us. And if I'm correct, we got KGCDirect.com is the best place for somebody to reach out and find you. Check out the website.
Absolutely.
Ken, is Upside available on Kindle?
Yeah, I think it's available in all the forms.
Okay, cool. I'm going to order it tonight. Looking forward to it, Ken. Good. Ken, thanks for your time.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, Cameron, was really excited about this. I wasn't sure where to. I wasn't sure how it was going to benefit our audience, but man, you had some great nuggets there, and I'm really glad that you took the time to be on our podcast, Ken. So thank you.
Absolutely, my pleasure. God bless you guys, and we'll see you soon.
God bless you. Go make it a fantastic day.
Take care.
Yeah. Bye-bye.